I've already heard far too many narratives about the 2025 quarterback class. I've heard it's not up to standard, I've heard there's no first round quarterbacks, but today we're going to blow that notion out of the water. Meet Carson Beck. 6'4", 220 pounds, Beck was a 4-star recruit coming out of Mandarin High School and has since been put into a box. A polished and mature young player who may be pro-ready one day, but nothing special in terms of talent. But when you hear him speak, you can tell that he has a certain confidence, a borderline arrogance that most of the best quarterbacks have. He believes in himself, and he should. Most college quarterbacks do not have a deep understanding and feel for their offense the way that Carson Beck does. And here's an example of what I mean. The read that I've put in a box is the one that he wants to get to, but he doesn't have to look at that read to know exactly when it's going to come open. And so he's going to intentionally stare down this read, which is dragging these defenders over and leaving space for the read that he wants to get to. And as soon as the receiver's coming out of his break, he flicks his eyes across and makes the throw. He does, however, need to be careful that he's not overly confident and assume that reads he trusts are going to be open every time. Here you're going to see the exact same play, and he assumes that the same read is going to be open and throws it into tight coverage. But generally, the ability to not stare down receivers is a very, very effective trait he has. Again on this play, he stares down this read, sucks the DB in, goes over the top with a perfect throw. Stares down the read, comes back to an open target with perfect timing. And speaking of timing, his ability to throw with timing is another huge part of his processing. You'll see here that the receiver isn't going to gain a huge cushion on his DB, but the throw is complete because Beck has anticipation. Again here you see the timing with his receiver to throw the ball right as he's turning his head. And another example of perfect timing on this play. Another really advanced part of his processing that you would expect from an NFL quarterback is his understanding of leverage, i.e. his understanding of how to put it where only his receiver can get it. On this play, for example, he understands that even though his receiver is covered and he can't throw it into any of these spaces, if he puts the ball here, there's no way of the DBs getting through. Or on this deep ball where, even though his receiver doesn't have a step, Beck has the ability to drop it underneath, as opposed to a deep ball like this. Even though it's not a completion, you can see his ability to drop it in the basket over the top. Carson Beck takes the opportunities. This is something that all the best quarterbacks in the NFL do. They do not try to protect themselves from throwing interceptions, they go to win the game. And Carson Beck not only has the talent to make these throws, but he also has the courage to pull the trigger. But of course there needs to be a balance. You need to be able to protect the ball as much as you are taking the opportunities, and Carson Beck is good at this, not because he's conservative, but because he's aware of the danger and how you manage the danger. He has an ability to recognise the lurking defenders who can make a play on the ball, and whether it's a case of going in another direction, a bit of hesitation to pull the defender out of that space, recognising that the ball needs to be thrown with some velocity so that the defender can't get there, or just a general circumstantial awareness like on this play, where even though the defender is in a dangerous position, because he's got his head turned, he can't make a play on the ball. Carson Beck is not a Patrick Mahomes or Caleb Williams. I have seen him when under pressure trying to do these off-platform things and ending up putting the ball in danger because he doesn't have that ability. I think he has quick feet and good feel for the pressure. Being able to manipulate the pocket requires a different type of athleticism, which I do think he has. And he's not a complete statue. He can move around. He certainly has a slightly false perception of him being a statue, where actually this is only a recent thing where every quarterback has to be a superhuman athlete. He moves fine. Nevertheless, it still goes into the negative pile because he is going to take some sacks where a lot of these guys coming into the league aren't, because of that superior athleticism. And he did have 7 fumbles on the year where maybe some of these other prospects would have been able to escape that pressure. But he can move and he can throw on the run. It's not going to be the off-platform stuff, but it's not one of these stiff quarterback prospects who, as soon as their feet aren't set and they're on the move, they can't make a throw. And I don't even want this to become misconstrued as I don't think he can succeed under pressure. Because all I'm pointing out is that he's not going to be a scrambler, he's not going to be the hero on a bad team. But with his size and frame and arm strength and ability to throw the ball on time with accuracy, throwing lasers as he's being hit, not having to escape the pressure all the time just because there's a bit of pressure, he can make the throw regardless, he's the man.
So, a time has come to make a decision.
So, I think we've covered everything. Carson Beck is a machine from the pocket, although he may not have the playmaking upside of some other prospects. Now let's look into the future and discuss what the next few years might actually look like. First of all, I'm not a huge college football watcher. I'm obsessed with evaluating the prospects, but not so much generally. I would assume Georgia are going to be pretty dominant as they are most years, and I don't know exactly what went wrong in the Alabama game, but I don't think they've ever had a quarterback like Carson Beck, and so it makes sense to me that they're pretty strong favourites to win the national championship, and if that's the case, I think Carson Beck's a very strong favourite to win the Heisman. And you get this kind of domino effect where, if those two things happen, now he's pretty nailed on to be the first overall pick. I think that would be the case regardless. Just as a bit of fun, I wanted to start to consider where the landing spot might be. I think he's going to be the first overall pick, and I think the Raiders would be an obvious shout. I haven't broken these teams down properly for this exercise. I actually quite liked the look of how things were building for the Raiders towards the end of last season with the new head coach Antonio Pierce, but they're probably going to be in this region and they're probably going to be in the market for a quarterback, as are the Titans if they're in this region, because that probably means, whether it's fair or not, they're starting to give up on Will Levis, and it sounds like the Giants were trying to trade up to get Drake May this year, so that's kind of an obvious one. But then the two teams who seem most likely to end up with the number one pick, to me, are the Panthers and the Patriots. And I wanted to throw this out there because I don't think it's as crazy of an idea that one of these teams end up taking Carson Beck number one overall as you may think looking at it now. I see this as a real possibility. The Panthers end up with the number one overall pick. We know that their owner can be not only volatile but maybe controlling decisions that he shouldn't be controlling. It seemed like the Panthers were going to be taking CJ Stroud for a long time, and something happened very close to actual draft time where Bryce Young became the pick. That seems to me like the owner having a conversation with Bryce Young, a very bright and humble personality that comes across in the right way, and making a rash decision that now he's the guy and no one can tell him otherwise because he's the owner. If the Panthers end up with the first overall pick, this would be what I think ends up happening, genuinely. And in terms of the Patriots, this would be an even bigger shock, but I'm starting to hear that Drake May is going to be in there year one. My personal opinion is that that would be a disaster, and narratives can change when it comes to quarterbacks far quicker than we seem to remember when projecting into the future like this. It was no shock that Kyler Murray got taken with the first overall pick. However, that was only after Josh Rosen's rookie season, but it was so obvious that he's not the guy, and people liked Kyler Murray as a prospect. I could honestly see that scenario as well with Drake May and the Patriots. In terms of what Carson Beck can achieve in the league, I'm not going to go crazy and start speaking about 10 years from now, but just early years. This is the sort of guy that ends up having a rookie season like a CJ Stroud, a Justin Herbert, a Mac Jones. Guys who are just ready straight away, whether it's processing, accuracy, pocket movement, just polish in general. He's going to be ready for the NFL. He's ready now. If he was going to come out now, he'd be in the conversation for my QB2, and I would have him ahead of my QB3 in this class, JJ McCarthy. And I honestly think this is going to be a guy who ends up being a top 10 quarterback within his first 2 or 3 years in the league. I know this all seems very speculative for a guy who's not even coming out this year, but this is just how good I think he is. So there you have it. My first evaluation of this 2025 class and many to come. Let me know who I should take a look at next, and tell me what you think of Carson Beck. Am I being too optimistic? Is there something I'm missing? I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.